We have already implied that the global south and global north have very different emissions per person per year, as well as very different vulnerabilities to climate change and very different impacts on the environment, obviously, by lifestyle choices and consumptions. If you look at the top 5 solutions to climate change: wind turbines, reduced food waste, women's empowerment, refrigerant management, and plant-rich diet, then you have to start thinking about how climate justice is going to come about. So there are two things. One is called climate mitigation, where we try to a priori reduce our impact on climate change by doing these renewable energies, refrigerant management, moving away from meat and going into plant-rich diets, and so on. But is it always possible to do these? Right? It depends on, for example, CFCs were replaced by HFCs because CFCs are harmful to the ozone hole. HFCs now turned out to be very bad for global warming. It's a very strong global warming greenhouse gas. What will replace HFC? How will poor and developing countries manage refrigerants? For example, if the tropics are warming and people are growing in living standards, they will want more air conditioning. So how do we give them more air conditioning? Who will own HFC technology and whether they will share it? Okay. Adaptation, on the other hand, is something where you modify your ways of life to deal with the changes that are already happening. For example, the Indian monsoon is having more extreme rainfall, so heavy rain events have increased and they have become more widespread. This affects not only life and property in terms of floods, but also agriculture, crop damage, whole crop calendar, and so on. Right? So this is adaptation then requires changes in the way we grow food, we deal with health, we deal with energy, we deal with water use, and so on. So the adaptation mitigation are not always separable. That has to be kept in mind. So you have to take the fact that the impacts are disproportionate, as we saw. The rich countries are living well by exploiting resources elsewhere as well as emitting a lot more. Poor countries are supplying the resources to rich countries, and internally and externally also there are climate hazards causing so-called displacements. Okay, so this is a figure from UNDP, United Nations Development Projects, Organization of Economic, I think, or Development Ocean Development Institute. Sorry. Slow onset events of climate hazards like soil gradually drying, but access to irrigation allowing people to continue to plant in degraded soils. So in that case, they will stay and adapt. Slow or repeated sudden onsets like sea level rise, coastal erosion, floods inundating lands and homes permanently. So people may migrate on a long-term basis. Sudden and medium onset droughts or persistent heat waves, reducing crop yields and incomes, contributing to movement. So again, may lead to migration on a long-term basis. Even if you go to the past, many civilizations have gone extinct because of repeated climate events. For example, in South America, persistent La Nina-like pattern, which we haven't talked about El Nino and La Nina, but you can look it up. I also have podcasts talking about El Nino and La Nina. It basically produces cold, anomalous temperatures in the eastern equatorial Pacific around Galapagos, which creates very dry climate on the west coast of US as well as South America. If cold patterns persist, as they are doing now under global warming, then you will have persistent drought-like conditions along those regions. Mayas, Incas, and other civilizations were affected by these kind of slow onset and slow persistence or long-term persistence of these climate events. So then if El Nino and La Nina are part of the natural variability, why do we have to worry? Basically because we have to make sure whether the Pacific will become more La Nina-like or colder temperatures in the east, or will it get warmer in the west east and become more El Nino-like? So those are the kind of interactions between natural modes of variability and climate change. Sudden onsets, of course, floods, storms, cyclones, temporarily displacing people until infrastructure, energy supply, water, health, etc. are restored. So they cause displacements or may cause cyclical or temporary migrations. This happens in seasonal migrations in parts of South America, Nordeste Brazil, for example, in India from central western parts to the eastern southwestern parts for migrant laborers during non-rainy seasons and so on. So multiple scales are involved in climate impacts and climate displacements. Why is this disproportionate? Of course, if you are rich, you might stay and not move and manage the hazard better than poor people, right? That's kind of what we have to worry about. We will talk about more of this climate hazard and climate displacement in the next podcast. This one is already 6-7 minutes long, so I will stop this here. But you can see that climate change affects natural variability. Natural variability has taught people to do temporary or seasonal migrations and displacements and come back. But climate change will make some of these more persistent, like droughts. Instead of happening, let's say, once in every 10 years or 20 years or 30 years, may begin to happen once in 5 years or maybe once in 2 years. So this begins to upset their calculations on how they deal with droughts. This happens not just human beings, but also for birds and bees and ecosystems and fish and animals and so on. It's happening already in parts of Africa, in the ocean, and on land.